making sure you don't put all your eggs in one basket because you never know what's going to happen. So you need to be able to pivot, like I've said before, pivot based on what disruption or what legislation or what hurricane or union strike or whatever could come next, and just try your hardest to stay on top of everything.
Yeah, have options.
Have options, yeah. For sure, yeah. For sure.
Risk mitigation. That's the theme of the episode, I guess. I'm Ron Burgundy, and this is Veronica Corningstone, and we have breaking news. There's another tariff on Canada and Mexico that has been announced. I'm joking. I've always wanted to do that with Danielle Goodrich. She is always breaking news to our team about what is happening in the world, and unfortunately, it's just not been like entertaining stuff. It's been very entertaining, but like bad things have been happening, like wars or
strikes
bridges, strikes or bridges collapsing. So it never felt like something comical to do the Ron Burgundy deal. So I'm happy that I could just get that out there today to start us off. And Danielle Goodrich is a buyer and a logistics manager for Polo. So she's super helpful to our team in terms of giving us the latest on what's going on. And I wanted to do a couple of things to kind of timestamp this, because no matter what we talk about today, it will be irrelevant by the time this airs. So we've been kind of just going through incredible changes right now. And so we thought it was a great time to have Danielle on. Today is the Sweet 16. Let's get a War Eagle for the Auburn Tigers. I hope that ages well. I hope I didn't just jinx something. I'm knocking on the table. I hope that's wood. So I'm really excited to talk to you today, Danielle, and thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me today, Sean.
Yep. And let's timestamp this. This is March 28th, and I think there's been like 5 different tariff announcements when it comes to Canada and Mexico and changes right now. So we're definitely spinning, and whatever we say today is probably irrelevant by the time this airs. So let's have fun with it.
Sounds good. You're very right about that. Yeah. Could change from minute to minute.
So let's start with your background, Danielle. How did you come to Polo, and how'd you get into the role that you're in today?
It's a good question. So I got into my role kind of by accident in a way, which I think happens to a lot of people.
You didn't aspire to get into manufacturing from a young age?
I got my degree in a completely different field. I got my degree in psychology.
Oh, nice. Me too.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah. To really do anything in the psychology field, you really need a graduate degree. And I decided I was ready for my career to start. Not that I didn't like school. I actually love school. I think I could be a student forever. And I kind of am in a way. We can talk about that later. I'm addicted to learning new things.
Absolutely.
So, but business was my original major before I changed it to psychology. And so I started looking in the business world and landed at Polo.
Nice.
I started out, of course, entry-level position, worked my way up. My position has changed and evolved quite a bit over the years, starting out as a purchasing assistant, I think. I can't remember what my title was so long ago, but
had a few.
Yeah. So I've always been on the supply chain side of things, always on the import side of things. Over the years, gradually increased to more information with global logistics. Over the last few years, being more involved in the domestic freight side of things as well too. So I am involved in full truckload, LTL, small parcel shipments as well. That's where I am today.
Yeah.
Basically logistics manager and import operations buyer for Polo 20 years later.
No lack of excitement in that arena either. When Jen was on the podcast, it was a little closer to the pandemic being fresh. And she was like, supply chain became cool and it is now too cool. Like everybody's talking about it. I'm like, come on, let's back off a little bit. There's a little too much excitement with all the different carriers and issues with slow boating and just all the crazy things that happened in the last 5 years.
It's never a dull moment, that's for sure. I think I saw that podcast with Jen, and she mentioned that, supply chain used to be in the background. No one knew anything about them. And over the last few years with the first U.S.-China trade war a few years ago, and then the pandemic and supply chain disruption after supply chain disruption. And so we've really become the forefront of a lot of businesses, and all eyes are on supply chains now, for sure.
Well, that's a good transition into the challenges that you've faced in your career, and how have those shaped, who you are and how you attack your role today.
So, as I said, challenges that are a daily occurrence with my position, with anything in supply chain, really. Challenges have changed quite a bit over the years. Early on, say, 17, 18 years ago, one of our main challenges was communication and language barriers. My main suppliers were in China. Our main method of communication was email. We were still getting quotes through the fax machine, if that tells you anything about how ancient that is. One good example of just the language barrier is that many, many years ago, we had a project we were designing for holsters for law enforcement, gun holster, handcuff holsters, and one for ammunition. And we had told our supplier we were working with in China that one of those holsters should hold a magazine. And they got incredibly confused by that. Why so small? Don't you want it, larger? And we found out that they were actually thinking of a magazine that you read, which, of course, so they were really confused and, probably thought, why do you want to carry a magazine on your belt for easy reading or something? So
never caught on in the market for some reason.
Right. So that's one example of the language barrier that we had to get through, and with communication limitations at the time. Now, of course, we've got video conferencing capabilities, Zoom and Microsoft Teams with our suppliers overseas. Quite often we have that capability for any of our partners overseas, even with the time difference. It could be 9 p.m. their time, 10 p.m. We're still making a call if necessary. So that visibility and the technology has come a long way. So that has really helped us as well with our communication with them.
It's definitely a high pressure gig that you're in. And we have giant OEMs that we serve. They have ever changing needs, and we always need to try to adapt to their timelines. And sometimes we have an import partner where a machine goes down or a raw material issue, and we're trying to get recovery plans or try to stay ahead of some of those things as we're learning about them kind of early. And early bad news is always good news. But how do you deal with that pressure and stay calm and attack the different things as they come up and in your role?
It's difficult. So I think more people think I'm more calm and level-headed than I really am. I think actually I was voted by my peers as most level-headed in the office a few years ago. On the outside, I could be, of course, a peer, more level-headed, more calm. On the inside, it's probably a completely different story. But it's just knowing that each day is a new challenge, knowing that ahead of time, and having all that experience can really help, because you know you're going to face challenges, and so just knowing that ahead of time can really help your mindset. Nothing is a surprise to me anymore at all.
Right.
So knowing that as well, that anything can come up can really help just prepare yourself.
Yeah, you've seen it all several ways and several forms, and so that I'm sure all of those reps over the years definitely help for sure.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, so the question of the day, the question of the hour, how have you seen these new tariffs and trade policies, this new administration that's moving seemingly faster than ever? How have you seen that impacting our industry and what we do, and how have we been handling those things? I see emails from you all the time that we get to communicate to our customers what is impacting them in real time. But yeah, what's your world looking like these days, Danielle?
Very chaotic, for sure. So yeah, tariffs are the main topic of discussion. Everyone seems to be an expert about them right now, but a lot of people don't really know a lot about tariffs. Tariffs have been around for centuries. They are a tax on the importer that we pay to U.S. Customs Border Protection. But tariffs have been around a long time. I think in the U.S., the first tariffs were recommended by Alexander Hamilton in the 1780s, I think. So they've been around a while.
Nice.
And now I'm going to have the musical in my head all day.
Yeah, right. That's the first time he's been name dropped on the podcast.
That's my daughter's favorite musical at the moment. We have normal tariffs, regular duties and tariffs, taxes. But over the last 2 months, they've really dramatically increased, and things change, I think, from day to day. Just a breakdown because things do change so quickly. We've got additional tariffs on pretty much everything out of China, tariffs on everything out of Canada and Mexico, with the exemption of items that fall under the USMCA free trade agreement. However, that exemption is due to be eliminated as early as next month, I think. We've got additional tariffs on steel and aluminum and the derivative parts of those from anywhere, regardless of country of origin. This week, it was announced that there will be tariffs on countries that import oil from Venezuela. So kind of like an alternative to sanctions, apparently, in a way. I'm not quite sure what countries that affects, but that's another one. We have potential tariffs announced next week, reciprocal tariffs on pretty much any country. We don't know what country, what items that pertains to. So with so many unknowns right now and so many changes, we don't know if all these tariffs will stick. We don't know if they'll increase or decrease. It's difficult for pretty much any company to plan accordingly right now. There's a lot of challenges there. Polo, I think, is situated in a good way right now to help our customers mitigate additional costs with these tariffs as much as possible. We have many options, right? So we've got manufacturing here in the U.S. Even if we do say, we have a product currently produced, say, in China, and that customer decides they may want to move back here to the U.S. to manufacture, there's still challenges there as well with tariffs, right? So, even if the finished product is produced here, some of those materials and components that go into that product could still come from overseas. So there's still challenges and still difficult to plan accordingly. However, especially once we know a little bit more about reciprocal tariffs, once things maybe calm down a little bit, we'll be hopefully ahead of the game with most manufacturers, most companies. We have partners in many countries that we can pivot to if need be, depending on capabilities, whether it's China or Vietnam, Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico. We're looking at at many different options, plus, of course, here in the U.S. with our manufacturing facilities.
It seems like a lot of people are potentially moving to Vietnam to try to get out of the China tariffs. And I kind of feel like that's going to be so many people moving to one place at once that it causes its own bottleneck. And then you still have all the materials, like you mentioned, that are sourced from China on top of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think your concern is a good one. You know, in the first U.S.-China trade war, 2018, 2019, the U.S. was not the winner and China was not the winner. It was Vietnam, really. So we had a lot of importers move manufacturing to Vietnam, and that is a start. We have partners in Vietnam as well, but a lot of those materials, the supply chain is much slower moving over there. So you still get a lot of those supply chain materials from China or elsewhere.
There's not just like a clean sheet website that you can go to when our ships are hitting the dock that say these tariffs are relevant right now.
Right. I think our customs brokers,
they've got some cheat sheets.
Right. They've got a lot of challenges ahead of them, knowing keeping everything straight.
Yeah.
What tariff pertains
Venezuela,
to what product today?
Oil came from this.
Yes. Some of the information I don't have, but our customs brokers that we partner with are very knowledgeable in all that and have what they need, and then also are able to communicate that information to me so I can get it on to you guys, right to the sales team to notify our customers accordingly and quickly, I hope.
Yeah, I know it was a few weeks ago, but one of our customers gets components to the finished good that we produce for them out of Mexico. And he's like, our students were interviewing him for a program that we run, an international business program. And he's like, I can't tell my CEO what my product's going to cost. So that's, it's just a really difficult time to be going through that when they had some big announcements and things going on. And so they were looked at pretty publicly. And he's like, I don't know what to tell my CEO on what the product's going to cost. So fun, uncertain times for sure.
Unfortunately, I think, everyone's in that boat right now. Yeah.
How are you approaching the challenges, the different trade restrictions? What's kind of Polo's strategy in the middle of all this? And how do you think about that, even from a timeline standpoint of what's happening, and will this level out at some point, do you think? I mean, what's your, if you could look into a crystal ball, what do you think will be going on in a few months or a year?
I feel like I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. A lot of quote unquote experts have been wrong time and time again, so it's very hard to predict right now. If I had to estimate.
But before we get into that, this podcast is brought to you by Polo Custom Products. We are a custom manufacturer that specializes in sewing, sealing, and thermoforming. We work with project engineers, sourcing professionals, and buyers to design, engineer, and manufacture products that cannot afford to fail. If you're interested in working with us, visit our website at www.polocustomproducts.com and fill out a request for quote form. Now, back to the show.
I'd say most of these tariffs will be sticking around for a little while. They may change a little, but I think this administration seems very gung-ho on them. So I would not expect anything in the very near future. Yeah. As far as what we're doing to mitigate these costs, that's tricky. That's part of the challenge that we have to face, whether it's negotiating costs with our current suppliers in some of these countries that are affected by these tariffs, bringing those costs down, hopefully, can decrease some of that total landed cost. Working with our global forwarder to see what other lanes or ocean carriers could we utilize that may be a little less expensive. For example, is there a different lane we can utilize that might mitigate some costs there? Don't know, but that's options we're looking into. Dual sourcing materials and finished goods in other locations is always helpful. Making sure that we have options available to pivot quickly in this fast-paced environment.
Absolutely.
We don't want to put all our eggs in one basket. We found that out several years ago with, supply chain disruptions, that you definitely want to diversify as much as possible. One option that we've been utilizing for a while that is not for everyone, but for some customers, that the end product is used in another country, but the product is produced in, say, China, for example. We do have options now of drop shipping directly from the manufacturer in, say, China or Vietnam, wherever, to the customer in, say, Europe. That avoids product coming here to the U.S., and so that avoids those tariffs completely because it's not coming in here to the U.S.
Right.
So that's something for customers and potential customers to keep in mind.
Absolutely.
As well.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's kind of a mix of a waiting game to figure out what's going to be happening. Yep. But also you don't want to wait too long. You have to be as proactive as possible. So, we're trying to do that as best we can in this environment that we're in right now.
That is, I think, a lot of the value that you and the supply chain team bring is relationships with lots of suppliers over lots of years and being able to dual source just accordingly,
right.
to whatever the rules of the day are. And
right.
I know it doesn't happen that quickly in a lot of the industries that we serve, but we've had to move faster to make changes more than ever when a resin just all of a sudden that changes after 20 years or something along those lines, where we saw a lot of suppliers make those decisions in a pretty significant way, and just kind of working our teams with our customers' teams to get those approvals in place so that we can continue to keep products on the shelf. So it's a fun landscape for sure.
It is. And you have to make split decisions sometimes. It can be a little tricky.
Manufacturing's hard, very deadline driven.
Very much so.
You're involved in different groups and industry organizations and networks, and Jen's involved in different ones. And so I was just curious, the benefit of being involved in those things, what kind of information you're hearing from those, or if you have any other information sources that you go to often to make sure you're up to date on on these changing times.
Our supply chain department, we are part of the ISM, which is the Institute for Supply Management. We have membership there. I think that is the oldest and largest world supply management association. There's a lot of training and education and research opportunities within that organization, as well as networking with some of the good experts in these fields that we're in. ISM also provides several certifications that many members of our supply chain team have, including me. I have my CPSM, my Certified Professional in Supply Management. We have a member of our supply chain team currently studying for her certification as well. We're also members of ATA, the Advanced Textiles Association. I think we've got a couple of members of the supply chain team, and including our director of supply chain, Chen Funnel, on various boards of that association, including the military division as well, which gives us a heads up with a lot of things there. Where I get a lot of my information on top of those associations is our customs broker, our 3PL. They are on top of things when it comes to new legislation, when it comes to disruptions for, global transit or even domestic freight. They notify us right away. My biggest source for information really comes from LinkedIn. I think I'm on LinkedIn more than any other social media site. Just the experts that I follow, the organizations that I follow on there, they are very thorough, very detailed, very quick to post information, which is very helpful in me providing the up-to-date information to the sales team or to our organization. So you can share accordingly with customers and be as proactive as possible.
Who's someone that comes to mind on LinkedIn as a good source for you?
So I follow Jason Miller. He is a professor. I can't tell you what university he's a professor of, but he really knows his information on tariffs right now, especially. He provides. I think he posts daily with different statistics, different charts, different all kinds of different things. So I find him very, very helpful, I guess. Very educational.
Jason Miller, if you're listening, we're gonna ask you to be a guest here in the future. We are trying to branch out a little bit, and I do find that really interesting. Like, I've got a brother-in-law in finance, and he follows these different. So I love hearing where people are getting their information on LinkedIn, and that sounds like a really cool one. Okay, we're just sticking with this theme of chaos and eternal disruptions, and you've talked about different incidents like the railway strike. We mentioned the bridge collapse, the reports that were backed up, and thankfully we have the Gulf of America that we can go through for our imports. But but I was curious, how do you handle these disruptions in your day-to-day when something new pops up like this? What have been some of the courses of actions that you've recommended to us that we can pursue for our customers? Yeah,
I think I said earlier, nothing surprises me anymore. If it can happen, it has happened to Polo, whether it's a weather-related disruption or a union strike at ports or railroad or trucking company. You mentioned the unfortunate bridge collapse. There was I think just right about a year ago, cargo container ship lost power and hit I think it was the Francis Scott Key Bridge outside of Baltimore. Unfortunately, some people lost their lives there with that. A big supply chain disruption, as well as there were ships stuck in the port, ships that couldn't get in the port, ships that had to find a different route to go, which caused congestion and all that stuff. Shortly after that, we had another cargo ship that had the opposite issue, where instead of losing power, they essentially their throttle got stuck in a high gear, sped at way too fast a speed out, in this port area. I can't remember what port it was, but that ship had to be anchored for, I think, weeks while there were investigations of what happened. Right. Unfortunately, Polo had product on that ship that just sat there for weeks, and there was no way that
possession of the U.S. Coast Guard, right?
Yes, you're right. Right. You're right. And there was no way for us to get our hands on that product, unfortunately.
Yeah, it hurt sales that month, so. No,
I'm sorry.
Kind of did, but it's nothing you can do.
So we run into things all the time that a lot of it is outside of our control. What's in our control, we try our best to handle. If it's something global, like a potential port strike that we just had over the last few months, we're able to pivot quickly with different routes. So, instead of going through the Panama Canal to the Gulf Coast, we were routing to the West Coast for a while. And then, of course, there's congestion there as every other importer is doing the same thing. But at least your product's moving, right? It's not going to be stranded if there is a strike for days or weeks or months. We are constantly trying to be proactive as much as possible. We can't always see into the future and anticipate what's going to happen, but we try our hardest, and we've made plans as much as possible to help mitigate some of those things. For global as well as our domestic freight, we have new processes, new technologies in place to provide real-time visibility of our shipments, whether it's materials coming into our plants or product on the water or at a port. Can see where everything is, anticipate hopefully a little bit better some of those disruptions that could be due to things like weather. If there's a snowstorm affects some of our materials coming into, say, our Iowa facility, we can try to do what we can to plan ahead, plan accordingly, reroute things if needed, bring things in a little early if needed.
You all do a phenomenal job at that. And I love the stat about us doing 80% better than the industry when basically on-time delivery just came to a crawl where only 10% of ocean freight was on time after the pandemic and in the height of all that. And I felt like your team was just had great relationships with our carriers over the years, and B, reserving ahead as far and as best as possible. So in sales, it's basically, do we have a quality product? Do we deliver on time for the best price that we can to the customer? And you all really knock it out of the park on that on time piece of it. So thank you for weathering all these different storms and all the proactive steps that you guys provide to keep those products going to our customers on time.
I appreciate that very much, Sean. And it is definitely a group effort, a team effort. Our supply chain team, even though it's 7 or 8 members, we don't have, it's not a very big department, but we are on top of things, or we sure try our hardest for sure.
When it comes to logistics, what do you think sets Polo apart from other people in the industry?
The broader supply chain question, I think our team, like I mentioned, our team is top notch, and I think that's what sets us off compared to our competitors. We have a smaller 7 or 8 team department, but I think we've got a combined over 100 years experience in the industry. 20 years for me. But we're all very knowledgeable in our own industry and our responsibilities and what we handle. That I think in itself, really, we have a leg up versus our competitors. We try our hardest to stay on top of things. Not only are we knowledgeable now, but as going back to my earlier mention of how much I'm addicted to learning new things, that has been pushed, really stressed in the company as a whole. But in our department as well, we are constantly learning new things outside of our individual continuing education that we do in our training. Our team gets together once a month for supply chain learning lesson, essentially. And it could be us all sitting in on the same webinar or seminar, or if one of us has learned something new, we'll share it with the team during that time and share our knowledge of that topic. So then we're all more knowledgeable on that. As the industry changes, it grows, it becomes more competitive, more technical as the items that we produce become more complex and more technical over the years. We can't be complicit. We have to continue to strive for something better, to strive for more knowledge and share that knowledge with everybody.
Your department is led by our Canadian advisor, Jen Fennell, and she is a process guru in my eyes, and really has been helping our whole organization improve and streamline our processes. And it's really clear how well dialed in your team is to their functions, and replicating those and having safeguards in place and having the system automate different things. So you guys are, setting the bar high for the rest of the organization. So
we
awesome.
try.
Yeah.
We try.
What trends do you see changing in the world long term, and let's say 5 to 10 years, and how will that impact Polo and custom manufacturing at large?
It's hard to tell right now what our trends would be. Diversification is still going to be a huge goal for manufacturers, for companies, making sure you don't put all your eggs in one basket, because you never know what's going to happen. So you need to be able to pivot, like I've said before, pivot based on what disruption or what legislation or what hurricane or union strike or whatever could come next, and just try your hardest to stay on top of everything.
Yeah, have options.
Have options. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. For sure.
Risk mitigation. It's the theme of the episode, I guess.
I guess so.
Well, and I guess we'll kind of end with the importance of relationships, with your carriers, with our import partners. How do you go about maintaining relationships with the people that you work with all across the world?
Relationships, I think, is the key word there, right? So we have some really strong relationships with many of our not only contract manufacturers around the world, our global forwarder, our customs broker, our 3PL provider for freight. My very first supplier that I worked with in China on my very first day here at Polo, I'm still working with today.
It's awesome.
We've built a very strong relationship. We've seen our each other's kids grow up, in that sense. Yeah. We can, of course, be stern with them when needed, but that close relationship can really help us in times of price negotiation,
recovery plans,
If we're in a bind, if our customers are in a bind and we need, expediting options for production, that type of thing. They've really helped us out of a bind many times before. Having those strong relationships can really help us help our customers. Right. So we either pivot for manufacturing, or if it's global forwarding, we're pivoting to a different lane or a different port, or, whatever. Just having those relationships and those partnerships really help us be as proactive as possible and as helpful as possible to get our customers not only the best price and the best quality, but product on time, right? Having those strong relationships is key.
Definitely. Well, that's a great note to end on, and appreciate you joining us on the podcast today, and really for all the value that you bring to our customers. I mean, it's something that makes it easier to sell Polo when we're out talking to prospects, is all the success that you guys have had as a department, and all the value that you bring to our customers. So appreciate you joining the podcast today. If you've watched this long, I'm going to do something unorthodox and timestamp this one other way, which is with an accessory that I am wearing today, which is a belt buckle, which I earned from a 100-mile race, which I never talk about on the podcast, but ran over the weekend. So I'm just going to show this off real quick, and we can call it an episode.
That's awesome.
You zooming in on that? Nice. The best part is, too, we have a competitor that wears belt buckles all the time. So,
oh, yeah, okay.